Buckle up, America, the 10 worst of Trump. Welcome to our countdown of the 10 worst things about Donald Trump's presidency. Whether you loved him or hated him, there's no denying his time in office was filled with controversy and debate. We're diving headfirst into the chaotic whirlwind that was the Trump administration, from the COVID-19 pandemic response to the events of January 6th. So, grab your beverage of choice, maybe a stress ball, and let's get started. COVID-19, a presidential pandemic playbook. Remember the before times? No, not before Trump, before COVID. Simpler times when the most controversial thing a president could do was wear a tan suit. Then came 2020, and with it, a virus that swept across the globe, turning our lives upside down. And how did the Trump administration respond? Well, if you can call it a response. There was the initial downplaying of the virus. It's just a flu, they said. It'll disappear like a miracle. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Then came the mixed messaging on masks, social distancing, and basically any other mitigation effort you can think of. One minute they were recommending masks, the next they were holding rallies packed with people, none of whom seemed to own a mask. The result? A public health crisis of epic proportions, with the US leading the world in COVID cases and deaths. Impeachment, twice is not nice. You know you've done something wrong when you get impeached once, but twice, that's a special kind of achievement. And yet that's exactly what Donald Trump managed to pull off. First, there was the whole Ukraine scandal where he was accused of pressuring a foreign government to dig up dirt on his political opponent. Totally normal presidential behavior. Then there was the second impeachment, this time for inciting the January 6th insurrection. Because apparently trying to overturn the results of a democratic election wasn't a bridge too far for some people. His supporters saw it as a witch hunt, a deep state conspiracy. His detractors saw it as long overdue accountability. Family separation, a stain on America's soul. Imagine being separated from your children. Now imagine being separated from them by your own government, with no idea when or if you'll ever see them again. That was the horrifying reality for thousands of families at the US-Mexico border under the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy. This wasn't just bad policy, it was a humanitarian crisis. Children, some as young as infants, were ripped from their parents' arms and held in cages. The images were seared into our collective consciousness, a stark reminder of the human cost of this cruel and unnecessary policy. The backlash was swift and fierce, both domestically and internationally. Eventually, after weeks of public outcry, the administration was forced to back down. In August 2017, white supremacists descended upon Charlottesville, Virginia, for a rally that would become a flashpoint in America's ongoing struggle with racism. The images were shocking, torch-wielding marchers chanting Nazi slogans, violent clashes between white nationalists and counter-protesters, a car plowing into a crowd, killing one and injuring dozens. And how did President Trump respond? By saying there were very fine people on both sides. Let that sink in for a moment. His comments were met with widespread condemnation, with many accusing him of emboldening white nationalists and legitimizing their hateful ideology. The Charlottesville rally, and Trump's response to it, became a defining moment of his presidency, exposing the deep divisions in American society. Climate change is real when even the oil companies acknowledge it. But Donald Trump? Not so much. In one of his most consequential acts as president, he announced the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, an international accord signed by nearly 200 countries to combat global warming. His reasoning? Well, he claimed it was a bad deal for America, that it would kill jobs and hurt the economy. Never mind the fact that the vast majority of scientists agree that climate change is real, man-made, and an urgent threat to the planet. The decision to withdraw from the Paris Agreement was met with widespread condemnation from world leaders, scientists, and environmental groups. It sent a clear message that the U.S., once a leader in the fight against climate change, was now turning its back on the rest of the world. The environmental and diplomatic consequences of this decision are still being felt today. In 2017, Hurricane Maria, a Category 5 storm, devastated Puerto Rico, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. The island, already struggling with economic woes, was ill-prepared for a disaster of this magnitude. The Trump administration's response was widely criticized as slow, inadequate, and insensitive. It took days for federal aid to arrive, and even then, it was nowhere near enough to meet the needs of the millions affected. Trump himself seemed more interested in downplaying the disaster than in actually helping the people of Puerto Rico. The handling of the Hurricane Maria disaster in Puerto Rico was a major failure of leadership on the part of the Trump administration. Chapter 7, North Korea, Love Letters and Rocket Man. Remember when Trump said he and Kim Jong-un were going to fall in love? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Trump's relationship with the North Korean dictator was nothing if not bizarre. One minute they were exchanging insults and threats of nuclear war, the next they were holding hands and declaring their undying affection. Trump seemed to believe that his personal brand of diplomacy, heavy on spectacle and light on substance, could achieve what decades of traditional diplomacy couldn't: the denuclearization of North Korea. He met with Kim Jong-un 3 times, becoming the first sitting US president to do so. But despite the photo ops and the glowing self-congratulation, the summits yielded little in the way of concrete results. North Korea's nuclear program continued unabated, and tensions on the Korean peninsula remained high. Chapter 8. Tax Cuts. A Gift to the Wealthy. Trickle-down economics. It's the theory that if you give enough tax breaks to the wealthy, the benefits will eventually trickle down to everyone else. It's also been proven wrong time and time again. But that didn't stop the Trump administration from pushing through massive tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy in 2017. The argument was that these tax cuts would boost the economy, create jobs, and raise wages for everyone. The reality? Not so much. Chapter 9. Black Lives Matter. A Nation Divided. The death of George Floyd in May 2020 sparked a nationwide reckoning on race and police brutality. Millions took to the streets demanding justice for Floyd and an end to systemic racism. The Black Lives Matter movement, once a fringe issue, was thrust into the national spotlight. The Trump administration's response to these protests was, to put it mildly, tone-deaf. Instead of listening to the legitimate grievances of millions of Americans, Trump chose to demonize the protesters, calling them thugs and threatening to deploy the military to quell the unrest. His actions were widely condemned as an authoritarian overreach, an attempt to silence dissent and stifle free speech. Chapter 10. January 6th, a day of infamy. And so we come to the final and arguably most disturbing chapter in the Trump presidency, the January 6th insurrection. On that day, a mob of Trump supporters, fueled by his lies about a stolen election, stormed the U.S. Capitol in a violent attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. The images were shocking: rioters breaking into the Capitol building, vandalizing offices, clashing with police, threatening lawmakers. It was a direct assault on American democracy, an unprecedented act of political violence that shook the nation to its core. Trump's role in inciting the insurrection is undeniable. He spent weeks spreading baseless claims of election fraud, whipping his supporters into a frenzy with calls to fight like hell to overturn the results. And even as the violence unfolded, he was slow to condemn it, instead expressing sympathy for the rioters. The January 6th insurrection was a dark day for America, a stain on our democracy. Outro: Trump's legacy, a reckoning for America. Thanks for watching our countdown of the 10 worst things about Donald Trump's presidency. It was quite a ride, wasn't it? From the COVID chaos to the impeachment dramas to the January 6th insurrection, Trump's presidency was anything but boring. Whether you loved him or hated him, there's no denying that Donald Trump left an indelible mark on American history. Let us know in the comments what you think were the most significant moments of his time in office. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this.